Today's film is Willow Creek. Before I get into the review, spoiler warning. This movie is found footage and focuses on a couple, Jim and Kelly, filming a documentary about Bigfoot. Jim is a believer, Kelly is not, which also happens to have been the case with the people playing them. Even though the film focuses on them creating a documentary, the movie itself is not a mockumentary. As I'm sure you can guess, by the end of the film, the two end up getting a lot more than they bargained for, and actually have a run-in with a paranormal primate. The name Willow Creek refers to the town that the movie takes place in, which is the Bigfoot capital of the world. Looks like I might have to take a road trip one day. The setting is very unique, and one that isn't just the standard forest you see in so many Bigfoot movies. Watching the film, you can definitely tell that the movie's writer, Bobcat Goldthwait of all people, did his research and made a Bigfoot movie and not just a creature feature with Bigfoot as the monster. In addition to the film opening with Jim and Kelly in the car, with Jim mentioning how there have been centuries of Bigfoot sightings all over the world, and the two having a debate about why we don't have a Bigfoot body yet, the scene that made me realize just how much care went into this was when Jim and Kelly are looking to go to the site the Patty film was shot in, only to be told that it no longer exists due to flooding. This is true in real life and has been the bane of many that are trying to either recreate the famous footage or trying to calculate Patty's height, weight, speed, etc. The first half of the film primarily deals with Jim and Kelly interviewing Willow Creek locals and asking them about their belief in Bigfoot and if they've had any run-ins with the world hide-and-seek champion. Interestingly, the people being interviewed didn't know that the film was going to be fictional and not an actual Bigfoot documentary, a decision that was likely made so they'd feel more comfortable on camera instead of trying to play a part. This segment of the film also contains not one, but two original songs about the Patty film, which always improves the movie, in my opinion at least. So I do commend the film for the respect and attention to detail it treats the topic with. However, like I said, the film is not a documentary or a mockumentary, meaning that it eventually has to have an actual plot, and that's where it falls apart very, very quickly, or rather, very, very, very slowly. About 45 minutes into this 80-minute movie, the story finally begins, beyond just following Jim and Kelly as they talk to locals of Willow Creek about their beliefs regarding Bigfoot. When they get into their tent for the night, Jim proposes to Kelly, and she tells him it's too soon, but that they should move in together. It's probably for the best that the two don't get married. I mean, Dad believes in Bigfoot, Mom doesn't believe in Bigfoot. What do you teach the kids? Following this, they go to bed. They soon wake up after hearing strange noises outside, which leads to the film's most iconic scene, and let me tell you, it is intense. Literally, it's just the two of them, in a tent, hearing noises coming from outside the tent, and talking about how they're hearing noises coming from outside the tent, for, no exaggeration, 18 minutes straight. 18, uninterrupted, agonizing minutes. In a movie that's about 80 minutes long. Time well spent. The word slog is a Bigfoot-sized understatement when it comes to describing this scene. I don't know if they just ran out of money while filming or what, and honestly, I'm not sure if that justification would make this decision a better or worse one. You don't see anything, you hear various whoops and howls, all performed by Mr. Goldthwait himself, and you also hear footsteps outside. The footsteps sound far, far too light to be coming from a Sasquatch, and because of this, I was actually expecting a twist where there isn't a Bigfoot, and instead the danger in this film comes from a malicious human being, and the whoops and howls were him sadistically scaring the couple in the tent. Instead, the scene just drags on for 18 minutes, and when the sun comes up, Jim and Kelly decide it's time to head home rather than stick around to find out if Bigfoot really exists. The next morning, they get more and more lost trying to find their way out of the woods, and finally learn firsthand that Bigfoot really does roam the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Interestingly, even though the main characters come face to face with the Sasquatch, the viewers never do, and the creature remains off screen throughout the entirety of the film, a la the Blair Witch Project. In fact, some people have even given this movie nicknames like the Blair Squatch Project or the Barefoot Project. I actually really liked this decision. It's really, really difficult to make a convincing Bigfoot costume. Just ask anyone that's tried to recreate the Patty film. And keeping the monster just out of view works better than having some guy in a gorilla suit come out and kill not just the main characters, but the atmosphere as well. Some people might think it's a cheap cop-out to never show the Bigfoot in a Bigfoot movie, but I think leaving the creature's appearance up to your imagination is a lot scarier than anything that they could have put on screen. I can't find a budget for this movie anywhere, but they clearly weren't working with a ton of money when they made the flick, so I think that choosing to keep the monster off screen was the right decision, as opposed to using whatever a Bigfoot suit would have looked like, given the financial constraints that they were likely working with. During the 45 minutes of setup in the beginning of the film, Jim and Kelly see a missing persons flyer for a missing woman. Later in the same portion of the film, one of the people at the interview claims that Sasquatches will kidnap human women as their forest brides. Talk about subtle foreshadowing. Chekhov could learn a lot by watching this flick. At the end of the film, when Bigfoot attacks Jim and Kelly, you do briefly see the missing woman amidst all the chaos, and it's implied that she has become Bigfoot's forest bride. And with Jim dead, Kelly's gonna be his next one. Roll credits. I think the forest bride idea is another example of the research that went into this film. It's not really an idea that too many Bigfoot researchers talk about nowadays, but if you go back, say, 100 years, you'll definitely hear stories of Bigfoot carrying women off into the forest, never to be seen again. Now, I'm not sure I really believe those stories, but I definitely say they're a part of Bigfoot lore, if not necessarily Bigfoot fact. This part of the lore is not something that you see in a lot of Bigfoot films, and a break from formula is always going to be welcome in a genre that's as formulaic as Bigfoot films often are, even if this whole concept doesn't get explored too in depth. Now, for all of my complaints, the film's ending is actually very well done. It really does a good job of making you feel like you're there during a sudden Bigfoot attack. The scene is genuinely scary, and unlike a lot of other found footage horror movies, the characters filming during a life or death situation doesn't feel illogical. Even though you do get the found footage cliche where the camera gets dropped but it keeps filming what's going on, the horror comes from hearing what's happening off screen rather than seeing anything, since, as mentioned earlier, you never see the creature. While I did enjoy the film's ending, the issue is that ending is about 5 minutes long, in an 80-minute movie. It's not even a third of the length of the one tent scene that just doesn't end. Like I said, there are some parallels between Willow Creek and the Blair Witch Project, and honestly, I don't actually think that's a good thing. Now, there's nothing wrong with emulating other films in the horror genre, but you have to remember that the Blair Witch Project worked as well as it did because of the circumstances under which it was released. Circumstances that will never exist ever again. Picture it. The year is 1999. The internet exists, but it's nowhere near what it is today in terms of how widespread its adoption is. You can't just immediately have the answer to any query by typing it into a search bar. When they were promoting the Blair Witch Project, they actually made missing persons posters for the characters in the movie. They had interviews with families of the actors where they acted like they were really missing. They released a mockumentary that was presented as a documentary called Curse of the Blair Witch, that treated the disappearances as if they were genuinely a true crime case. And they even had the film's actors stay out of the public eye for months to really sell the idea that they'd gone missing. When people saw the movie in theaters or rented it to watch at home, they genuinely believed that what they were watching actually happened. Now, I'm not saying every single person fell for the ruse, but a lot of them did. And you can't just make a found footage movie like the Blair Witch Project the same way that you can make a slasher movie that's like Halloween. There was simply no way to try and emulate the same feelings that the Blair Witch Project gave people in 1999 by the time that Willow Creek was released in 2013. My honest opinion is that if Willow Creek is going to dedicate over half of its runtime to following the two leads making a documentary, at that point they should have just outright made a mockumentary, or even a documentary, about Bigfoot, and kept the part of the film with an actual story as a purely fictional segment following the documentary's creators trying to find Bigfoot and getting a lot more than they bargained for. As is, the first 45 minutes of the movie just feels like filler. Hell House LLC, that was released a year after this flick, was a similarly structured found footage horror movie, with the bulk of the film's runtime being dedicated to following the main characters making a documentary about the haunted house attraction they're creating in a location that's rumored to be a portal to hell. This part of the film ultimately builds up to a horrifying and chaotic climax, similar to Willow Creek. What Hell House LLC did right that Willow Creek did wrong was it used the documentary making part to not only set up parts of the climax, but also to build the film's uneasy, claustrophobic atmosphere. In Willow Creek, the atmosphere of the first 45 minutes is honestly pretty upbeat. There's a ton of Bigfoot imagery, but it portrays the gentle giant version of Bigfoot that you'd see in pop culture, rather than the bloodthirsty apex predator that's the antagonist in this movie. Rather than using this time to build atmosphere or even tension, the movie just used it to film a few interviews and establish the missing person and the idea of Bigfoot and his forest brides. Now, after watching Willow Creek, I did what everyone else does after watching a movie in 2025, and went online to see what other people thought of it. To my surprise, I found a lot of people saying that they loved the flick, and that the 18-minute tent scene is far and away their favorite part of the entire film, describing it as a masterclass in building tension, and that they enjoyed watching Kelly's 18-minute transformation from Bigfoot skeptic to terrified true believer, as the sounds outside began coming closer and closer, and she became more and more aware of just how much danger they were in. To each their own, as they say. The movie Willow Creek is ultimately a you love it or you hate it movie, I guess, and if you fall into the latter camp like I do, it can be a pretty tough watch. Respect for the subject of Bigfoot and a thrilling conclusion, but genuinely agonizingly poor pacing means that Willow Creek gets just 2 Bigfoot tracks out of 5.